Hello there, and welcome to another episode of the Throwing Bagels Podcast. Jason Hamo here, along with Kevin Mooney. Kevin, how you doing?
I am good, Jason. How are you?
I'm good. And Chris Douglas from Arizona. How you doing, buddy?
Jason, I'm dried up like a plum.
We have another great guest today. We have Dana Murphy, formerly Dana Siegel, another Oswego alumni. She is the sales director of AmperWave and Audacy Company right now. And she also was at Oswego at around the same time that we were all there. Welcome, Dana. How are you doing today?
I'm great, Jason. How are you? Thanks for having me on.
Glad you could join us today. So, Dana, this week, you and fellow Oswego alum Susan Larkin are hosting a special reception with us new Oswego president, Dr. Nwosu, at the Audacy NYC offices. How did this event come together?
We were actually supposed to do this event in April, but at the time, we were in the middle of the presidential search for a new president. So obviously, President Stanley had already left. Dr. Toll was the interim, and there was a lot of movement going on with interviewing candidates, et cetera. But the idea was to talk about the new SCMA building, and New York being a big area for broadcasting and agencies, et cetera. We were going to invite all of the broadcasting industry alums to come to the Audacy offices, which is a great space, owner of some of the largest groups of stations in the country. We thought it'd be a great opportunity, but also in April, besides being in the presidential search and not having a formal president, the biggest trade show of the year for broadcasting happens in April, which is the NAB in Las Vegas. So a lot of people are out of town for almost a full business week. There's lots of holidays going on in April plus spring break. So we decided to move it to the fall once we had a new president in place, which we now do. And we were able to open up the event to a lot of other alums in the New York City area, which there are many in New York City. The opportunity also came about because Susan, who is the COO at Audacy, is an alum from the class of 85. And I had met her through LinkedIn and through some other events a few times, and got to know her. And like the second day I worked for Audacy, I was in the Philly office and I walked into her office and I was like, I'm Dana. We've been talking on LinkedIn and we've, done a couple of virtual events together, and we kind of clicked, and she was very interested in getting involved. She hadn't really done much yet. And we decided to co-host these events together, which she's very excited about. The other cool thing is she's our COO, and in the radio space, there aren't a ton of women in these executive C-suite type positions. She's worked her way all the way through Audacy, like even when it was Entercom. And so to have somebody like her co-host the event, offer up this space, which is an amazing space downtown New York City with a performance space and a great atrium area in front of some legacy New York City stations, was an amazing opportunity because a free space is always great in New York City. And we're super excited. So kind of everything was coming together for April, but really came together this fall with the timing and the fact that we have a new president and that we could open it up to a lot of alumni. So we're super excited for this coming week, and to host everybody there.
What's been the level of interest from the Oswego community in attending?
Yeah, so I was sending things out on my own socials and LinkedIn, and so were a lot of other alums. We have about 60, I think, attendees. I think the space can hold about 70 something. So we're almost at max, which is great. Because the worst thing you want to do is, have your COO help you co-host an event and then like no one shows up. But New York City alums are not like that. They show up, which is amazing. And in a lot of other cities they do as well. But it's hard when you have like post-COVID, people aren't in the office all the time. So we're very fortunate that a lot of people, like some on this podcast, are coming in on the days that they normally would not come into the city to come to this event. And we have a lot of broadcasting and comm alum, but we also have a lot of other majors as well who are interested in meeting our new president, interested in seeing the space. They'll talk a little bit about the SCMA building, but a lot of it is about our new president and his vision and what's going on campus. So great response, lots of sharing on social. It'll be great to see people and be in that space.
What can attendees expect to hear from Dr. Nwosu?
So I think he's going to present a little bit about obviously himself and his history and how he's gotten to where he is, which I think resonates a lot in New York City, which was a place where a lot of families came through as immigrants to the country originally. New York City as a population for alums is big and very diverse, which is great. And so we'll hear, I think, a lot about, his journey. And then we'll hear about his vision and his plan for Oswego in terms of the campus and, the funding and the scholarships and endowments and all of that. So I think that's kind of the idea. And I know that there will be a good portion of Q&A. We're not making this him constantly, talking the whole time. People have questions. A lot of people couldn't make it to reunion. So they're coming to this event, perhaps. They want to meet him. We had a president, luckily, for so many years. There was such consistency. This is brand new. And all of us knew President Stanley really is the only president of our college. So now's the opportunity to come and say, oh, we have a new president. What's this person's vision? What questions can I ask him? What does he see for the college and for the students and for the alumni? So that's the idea. I'm extremely interested in the Q&A. I think there'll be some great questions for him.
Well, I know one thing he mentioned in his state of the college address was the Vision 4040. So his goal is to expand the annual double the annual number of graduates of Oswego by 2040 to meet a lot of the needs of the Central New York region. So that's a very ambitious plan. So it'll be very interesting to see how he intends on going about implementing that.
I agree. Yeah, I mean, it is a big plan and a big vision.
Right.
Oswego has a lot of students that, come from far away that have to stay on campus. But I think there's a lot of industry, and I'm sure he's going to talk about that's coming into upstate New York that might allow for more commuters as well. So you might not need all those dorms, perhaps. I think you're going to, or not need additional dorms, let's say, right? Because the dorms are full, right? We fill them. So I think he's looking towards industry and more to local community, but I'm very interested in the same. And I can even ask him that question this week as well. How are you going to handle it? Like, this is a large influx of students. You need professors, you need dorms. So if I don't bring it up, I'm sure somebody will, because that's probably the first thing that comes to people's minds. Our campus is only so big. It's a beautiful campus and we love it, but it's only so big.
I mean, if you think about the people that we all met in college, for the most part, right? I would say majority, more than 50%, came from the Albany and West, right? And North, but you had a decent amount Long Island, but I would say that majority of the students came from those, Albany, Buffalo, Rochester areas, is from at least what I saw. We did have a decent amount of commuters, but I see it more as there would be more people coming that wouldn't be commuters. So with that said, we might need to, they would have to think about adding more somehow. I don't know how they would do that, but they would have to, if they pushed further down, like towards like Bev's and Rudy's or something like that, to go down that way. If they could do that.
Is across the street from Rudy's.
That would be awesome.
That would have been fantastic back in the day, right? I wouldn't have gotten anything done. I would have just walked over there, gotten my fried fish, and come back over again, and then ice cream next door and come back.
Yep.
Although we walked to campus would have been horrible.
That's true. Well, maybe they build up versus out.
That's true.
Up.
Skyscrapers in Oswego, New York.
Yeah, you could see them from the shores of Canada if you look further away.
That's right. Seneca Hall will be 30 stories high. So.
Yeah.
There you go.
Totally fine in that wind. Totally fine.
Yeah, nothing can go wrong. You have been involved very heavily with the Alumni Association for quite a while.
Yep.
What made you decide to get involved, and you've held multiple positions. What made you decide to hold, many different positions at the same time?
So yeah, great question. Because a lot of people ask me, like, how did this happen? So first of all, I had an amazing experience at Oswego, to the point of like, I don't know that I would have my career and my family and my friends that are obviously my family is a big part of it, but like my friends from Oswego are still very much a big part of my life. And I also had the very fortunate experience of getting my first job in my industry that I wanted to be in through an alum, through career services. And career services at the time, which I think is now the Point in Murano, was like one room in Culkin Hall with one computer. There was like internet, you had to log into like Gopher to get to it and stuff. But there was a job board online, and I was able to get my first job in the radio space in sales through an alum. And so to me, that resonates so much. Like my whole life from, the age of 21 on was because of Oswego. And so it was like a pay it forward to me. Like I want others to have that same experience that I had even post college. I feel and still very fortunate for that. And so right away, I started volunteering in small ways, right? I was a reunion volunteer when it was more of like reunions every year kind of a thing, like not the clusters, I don't think, but I did that. I just got a thing in the mail for this. I'm a loyal Laker. So even when it's when you donate for consecutively for X amount of years, like without a gap. I'm going to tell you the number in a second, but like, even when I was making like nothing in New York City at my first job, I would give like $25, right? I really felt that strongly about the experience and what I was given. They just sent me a certificate in the mail, and I think it's a 25-year loyal Laker.
Wow.
Yeah, it's like kind of crazy.
Can't stop now. Better not miss a year.
I know, right?
That's right.
That's terrible. It's like the longest streak I've done anything consistently. So I've been doing that as well. And that's just like something small. If it can help a student with a scholarship or a book or a meal plan, anything, great. And then I would come to a lot of the same New York City events that I'm hosting. So that's a little bit full circle. We used to go to the Houndstooth Pub for stuff, go to the comm dinners, which we were all just at. And we were networking at those events as like early post grads. And I loved going back up to campus. So I was already very engaged. I was then approached by someone on the board who actually worked at the Oswegonian, who you all probably know, Amy Diger. And she was at the Oswegonian. She was editor. Vanderlei was her maiden name.
Oh yeah. Yep.
Yeah. And so she engaged me about the board, because the board is not your first point of engagement. And I hung out with them. I had some conversations with Betsy Oberst, and I was like, this would be great. Like I could do a little bit more. And it's not a huge time commitment. And so she nominated me, and there's a whole process. And I was lucky enough to be chosen out of there's only a few positions a year. And I've been doing that now for like over 10 years. And we meet a few times a year on campus. We do teleconferences as well. Obviously, COVID changed a little bit of that, but we do a lot of great work, and you learn so much more about how the college is run and how well run it is, especially in terms of staying fiscally responsible. You learn a lot about admissions and how admissions have changed, or what the landscape of the student body looks like. You learn about the public safety for the students, which is really important now. So we do all these presentations. And then there's impact, like we actually give scholarships from the Alumni Association. So we're directly helping students financially, like right away. So some of the impact takes a longer time, but some of it is immediate. And it's been a great experience. we're trying to expose the board a little bit more to students and to, students to the Alumni Association, so they know that it's there. And we're also, there was probably a time where you all were getting just inundated with phone calls for giving. That's all been kind of turned around now. This is now give us your time and your talent, right? Like, let's get you speaking to students, reconnect. That's priceless, right?
Mhm.
So we do a lot of that work as well. I'm an at-large member now. I was president for 4 years. I learned a ton. It was also a great resume builder. Like, I've been doing radio and audio for a while. This was a great way to volunteer, put that on my resume, but learn a lot of new skills like strategic planning,
Mhm.
budgeting, how to look at, endowments and how those work, and finances. And I'm terrible at math. You can ask the math teachers I had in high school and at Oswego, so bad, but I loved it. So it's a great opportunity. Even just the other volunteer opportunities before the board are really fulfilling. And it's been a great experience, and I love doing it. I can't vote at meetings anymore because I'm not a full member anymore. I'm what you call at large. So at the last meeting we had, I was so used to being like, yay, nay. And they're like, you can't do that. I was like, right. It's like, oh, this is weird. It's like a 10-year habit.
So you're just like there now? You're just like at the meetings and you can't do anything basically?
I give out scholarships. I just can't say yay or nay. But it's been great. And I've met amazing people. Like, I met such amazing people as a student. Like, you guys, I knew you guys at school. I've met more alumni across all decades, and they are amazing. They love Oswego just as much. And everyone has their own profession and industry that they can provide, something that is important to the board, whether it's finance, investment, communication, marketing. Such a great group of people and a good representation of our student body now.
Dana, we're going to talk a little bit more about your experience at Oswego in just a moment. But first, we wanted to talk a little bit about your role at AmperWave. So what exactly is AmperWave?
Sure. So if my boss listens, I better get this right.
Did they go to Oswego?
No, but like pretty much the one down from the head of the company did. So I better get this right.
Yeah, I get it right. Yep.
Yeah. So AmperWave is an end-to-end streaming and podcast solution for audio, whether you're a radio broadcaster, whether you're just doing an online station, and whether you have a single podcast or a network of podcasts. It also gives you opportunity for monetization, which is basically putting ads into all of your streams and your podcasts so you can make some money. So our platform essentially gives you all of those tools in one place to create the streams or the podcasts, monetize them, get analytics, data, etc., and then distribute them out to the listening audience. The product has had a couple of different names. It's been sold a few times, but now we're over at Audacy. So we're owned by Audacy, which has a couple of other companies that it oversees as well. They have podcast networks. So for you guys, like Pineapple Studios is a big part of Audacy. And then they've gotten a little bit into like the betting part too. So BetQL is betting content. So we work not just with Audacy for their streams, but we also work with other radio broadcasters and other online only companies to help them as well. It's really interesting. It's growing still. And it's a fun space to be in. Although I'll tell you, like when you do sales and you combine it with software, it gets a little tricky because software is software. And it's like, we need to develop this. And they're like 6 months. And I'm like, what? I'm like, just add it in. And they're like, no, it touches everything else and it'll break everything. And I'm like, my sales head can't get around that sometimes, but it's a fun.
People like you all the time.
Yeah. Yep. So
why can't we do this?
Yeah, I'm like, it's just zeros and ones. How hard can it be?
Yeah, that's simple.
And they all want to like slap me through Zoom. It's a really fun space. AmperWave. So if you stream any Audacy owned station, that is what I do. That's what I sell. that's powering all of that, as well as the ads that you hear, and then all of the data that comes back to Audacy.
It turns out that the Throwing Bagels podcast needs some money for Christmas and Hanukkah. How can we sign up and monetize this podcast?
There you go. Well, we should have a side conversation.
Okay.
But
All right.
there is the Audacy app, which you could add your podcast to.
Let's do it. Okay.
Yeah. So yes, we can talk about this for sure.
Okay. Gonna write
Sign
that
me
down.
Yeah.
Jot it down where we keep the notes. Right.
Yeah.
It's a long list. What is your day like as a sales director there?
It's busy. So ever since COVID, it's really super scheduled. You would have calls and meetings and do more travel and your day was a little open, but when everyone's at home and they're around and you're sharing calendars, the day can get pretty packed. There's a lot of meetings internal where it's, what's going on this week? What are your main focuses? And then there's end of the week meetings, like how did the week go? But day to day, I'm either, working internally with revenue teams to see how we're doing with hitting marks on digital inventory and filling as much as we can. But on the sales side is talking to current clients to say, hey, like open up more of your inventory or all of it, or give it to us to rep for you. You don't have to do anything. We'll revenue share whatever's made back to you. So a lot of the day is, checking in on current clients, working on that, renewing their contracts. But then there's also the new business, right? And that's talking to prospects, sending them information. I do my own demos at time. I think most of the time, I think it's important to know your product, be hands-on with it if you're going to sell it, right? Nothing drives me more crazy when there's like this higher up person and you're out and they can't like do what you do. I'm like, but you're higher up than me, like demo it. So I do a lot of demos, which I really enjoy doing, and it keeps me like up to speed with what's going on. So I do demos, I'm pitching, I'm putting proposals together, whether it's new business or renewal business. I read a lot of articles, what's going on. You need to know who's going where, what companies are using what products. So it's just kind of keeping up with the times. And then a lot of CRM work, which is making sure that I'm talking to the right people, that they're attached to these accounts in a piece of software that I can track, the company and the personnel, but also my, we'll call them deals, right? And the specifics of those deals and creating pipelines. I'm always working on pipelines. And while this might all sound a little boring at times, like a CRM, it really is a tool that is super helpful and makes your life easier. But the day-to-day interactions with my clients and prospects, but even my colleagues, I'm very fortunate to work in an industry with really great people and a company with really great people. So while sales can be hard, the culture is great. And so it makes it fun. I don't wake up and say, oh, I hate my job. I don't want to do it, even though I literally walk 10 feet down a hallway from my own house to do it. But it's a busy day. It's a fun day. Things can happen weirdly at any moment. You get the opportunity to talk to some cool companies too, like big sports networks or podcast networks. And it's a small space. So you're talking to your friends, really. So it's a busy day, but a fun day.
So first of all, who doesn't love a good CRM?
What is CRM? Hold on. What is CRM?
Yeah, can you please explain CRM for
Go
those
for it, Dana.
uninitiated?
Yeah, it's like a customer relationship manager piece of software, right? So it's basically, it comes to you blank usually, and you have to fill it in with companies you're working for, working with, the client, the staff there, and you're putting in their email and their phone numbers, and you're building this out for like a database. It also creates your pipeline. So you attach deals to every company so you can track your revenues, and you can break it up by month and forecast out into other years and know when they have to renew. So you're kind of building your sales life and pipeline off of it. And some of them are really great. Like you can, if I close a deal, it will automatically create a new one. So I don't have to worry about it. So I know in 24 months or 36 months, I got to start working on this again. You can email blast out of it, marketing items or, information. So once you build it up, you have a lot of, power behind it for your day to day to keep on track, but also, like if I'm out, someone else can go in and be like, oh, that's what she was working on. You link it to your email. It'll, keep tabs on your email so someone can see the last thing you sent. I'm sounding way too excited about
Salesforce is a good example of a CRM.
Yeah.
Some of the stories I've read around podcasting in general was that the podcast boom is over, that there were podcasts coming out every other second around the turn of this decade, 2019, 18, 19, 20. And some of the articles were basically saying that the boom is that era of massive expansion is over in the podcasting space. But Dana, what are you seeing? Where is the growth, or what are the opportunities for growth in podcasting going forward?
So I think it has mellowed a little bit, but there's still a lot of room for growth in the tech side of it in order to have like you guys generate revenue, right? I think that, everyone was like, oh, it's going to be $20 billion or something crazy. Listen, what happens a lot of time in the podcasting space, and you guys are doing a great job, because there are people who are like, we're going to do podcasts, and they do 3 and then they don't do it anymore. They call it pod fade, right? And so there was a lot of that because people were like, podcast, we're going to do podcasts. And then they did 4 and then they didn't do it anymore. There's the technology like my platform and others out there that can get your content out there. It's great. But not all of them have the capability to monetize them. And I also think there's what we call programmatic, which is basically automated advertising for digital, where people are just throwing ads in, right? Like it's a national buy and Coca-Cola buys it super cheap and they put an ad in, and you're making something. It didn't cost you anything to get that ad. But there's still things in the programmatic space to get more going towards podcasts. And the unfortunate thing is that the threshold for those ads right now to get placed are very high. Like you have to have X hundreds of thousands of downloads, right? Then they'll be like, oh, you get the $20 CPM versus the $4 or the $2. And so you have a little bit of disparity. So I think once you can better manage it across all levels, and the technology has to still be worked on a little bit, it's definitely better. I think that there's a lot of opportunity, but I think you're also going to have to be part of like a network or within a platform that can do it for you and aggregate everything as a whole versus being an individual podcast, if that makes sense.
Totally. It's time, Dana, that we're gonna hop in the DeLorean now, go back in time, right? So
I have my shed mug ready for there's not the usual liquid that should have been in here, but yes, let's do
that's
it.
just water, I'm sure. So
Yes.
all right. So actually, let's even go before that. So you were a broadcasting major at Oswego. What sparked your interest in broadcasting?
So shockingly, I was like a drama kid in high school. So I was like on stage, and I always did improv, and I ended up doing the morning announcements my senior year with another friend. So we got to be like goofy, and there was like a microphone, and so I just was always kind of into like the performance side. And so I was like, I'll do broadcasting, like that would be that would be great. And I really knew like right away, I'm going to do this. My dad is a lawyer. And I said, maybe I'll be a lawyer. He was like, bad idea. And that's the lawyer saying it. So I was like, we'll do broadcasting, which probably if you would ask the broadcaster, they'd be like, bad idea. But it was
Exactly.
a great idea. So, and I found a great school to do it at. So I just kind of went that way. I also love music. So in my mind, I was like, I could like perform on air and listen to music. Amazing. It turns out there's a lot more to it. And I ended up, enjoying more of like the business side of it, but I also enjoy doing on air things as well during that. So I just kind of had this in my blood, like for a long time of how can I perform, but not be an actor, maybe. Go to radio.
So what led you to attend Oswego? Were there any other schools that you were interested in going to?
So I never visited Oswego. I know.
You're not the first.
I
You're
know.
not the first.
I've listened to your podcast. I know. So I was
Thank
looking
you.
at a bunch of broadcasting schools. And honestly, even with I was out of state, by the way. I grew up in New Jersey. So even with the out of state tuition, it was still cheaper to go to Oswego than the other schools that I was looking at.
Wow.
So I was like, okay. And I had one friend who went to Oswego, and I called him up, and I got the brochure in the mail, and the pamphlets and everything. And the computer spit out Oswego in the guidance counselor's office, like these are the schools for broadcasting. So I got the pamphlet and I called him, and I was like, I'm not able to come up there. Am I going to like it? And I knew this guy for a long time. And he's like, you're going to love it. You'll love it. I know you're going to love it. And so that's kind of how it came about. And I stepped foot on campus. My first time was like when I moved into the dorms. I'd never seen it outside that pamphlet. There were no like video tours on a website. There's no YouTube to check it out, like nothing. So I just went on his recommendation. And the fact that the out of state, and still the out of state, is cheaper than most other colleges and universities. And that's,
Do you want to call out those universities right now? Call them out.
sure. Northeastern, Quinnipiac, Salisbury State was one of them, I think. Those were like the ones I was looking at. Northeastern was like bananas.
Yeah, sure.
And they're like, we can give you $3,000 in aid. And I was like,
Yeah.
thank
And it's still $40,000 a year.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, so those are the ones. But it worked out really well. I actually ended up taking a gap year and going a year later than I was supposed to, because your application is valid for a year. So while I didn't go in the fall of 94, I ended up coming in the fall of 95 instead.
Did he warn you? Did your friend warn you about the cold and the snow?
No, I had no idea.
Oh,
None.
man.
Yeah. So
Rude awakening.
yeah. Well, so first of all, I was driving from Boston to come upstate. I don't think I had been past Albany ever, maybe Lake George at the most. And I was probably on a family vacation and 8 years old at the time, right? I'm driving. So we took like 90 across, and I'm with my friend. She's driving me. And we're like, where are we? We're like, what is a leather stocking region? She's like, are you sure you want to go here? And I was like, yeah, let's keep going. Let's keep going. And then all of a sudden, all the town names turn into countries. Like, what?
Yeah.
How are we in Phoenix?
Poland and Canada.
Like,
Mexico.
Yeah. And she's like, you're still sure? I was like, yes, we're going to keep going. So I mean, really, I had not even been that far up. And I remember coming home for Thanksgiving break was like the first time I came home. And I immediately told my dad, I was like, I need a serious winter jacket. And because I didn't have one, I had a winter coat, but not like, I needed to block the wind. Like I'm going skiing, but I'm not skiing. I need that jacket. Block the wind. And then I got a serious winter coat. And then I learned what lake effect snow was and thunder snow. Yeah.
Crazy.
But I loved it. You know what I tell people? Go, oh my God, the weather. It's so, how can you go up there? I said, that weather made me the best friends I could ever have from college because you're not leaving your dorm.
Right.
I was like, you're eating all your meals together in Cooper Dining Hall. You're going between like two dorms because they're attached, by the dining hall. You're hanging out on all these other floors. I tell people all the time, I made the best friends because it was so cold.
So Dana, I want to talk about what I'm calling the Dana Siegel rule.
Oh. You
Um,
see curveballs. I asked.
this
you.
isn't a curveball. This isn't a
Okay.
curveball. This
Okay.
is something. This is a story that you told me about using your address to get in-state tuition.
Oh, yeah.
And how you went about doing it.
Okay. So,
Because it's not you can't do it anymore.
no, I'm pretty sure I broke the system. And I'm very sorry for all the rest of the out-of-state people. When I got to school, so I had taken a year off and I lived in Boston for a year. So I got a license in Massachusetts and I had, so then I moved and I needed a new license and whatever. But I was like, well, I technically live in New York now. And so I went to the DMV with my telecom bill from Culkin Hall and like my birth certificate or whatever. And I got a license that literally said 422 Hart Hall, Oswego, New York. But you have to be a resident for a year in order to get in-state tuition. So I waited that whole year. And for my sophomore year on, I got in-state tuition with a license that said 422 Hart Hall on it. Oswego, New York.
And then Oswego said, oh, wait a minute here.
I think the whole state said it, actually.
I personally think that's one of the best stories I've ever heard.
It's absolutely brilliant. Yeah, it's brilliant.
Oh, I got lots of tricks.
Like, I don't even know. I just personally, when you told me the first time you told me that story, I was like, that's ingenious. Like, never would have crossed my mind. I don't even think it ever would have crossed. I mean,
Well,
just
I don't know your situation, but like I was paying for school, right? I was taking out loans and I was like, well, how can I make this better? So, I worked the system a little bit. Yeah. Oh, the Dana Siegel rule. I bet it's in the book somewhere. It's so funny.
So you made the decision to go to Oswego. What was your experience like there?
I had a great experience. My first semester, I actually didn't do very well. But I got into it like second semester freshman year. And I kind of ended up like immersing myself into like WNYO specifically, and my major and the professors and then my friends as well, like getting really close with some people. But I think my experience, I don't know if listen, not everybody has an amazing college experience. For some people, it's hard, or they don't have a good time or they leave. And I was really lucky with the people that I met and the dorm I was put in and my major and the people that were part of my major. But I had a really great experience living on campus and off campus. I think the media center and the basement of Hewitt Union was what like made it just amazing, right? Just the time spent there and the people, and we did good work. Like we had fun, but we worked. And I just learned a lot. I another reason I chose Oswego too versus like a Northeastern or Quinnipiac. Northeastern, Quinnipiac, listen, they're great schools. They're beautiful schools. They also have amazing programs, but you're like a number there. And what I found was at Oswego, I was like a person to the professors, to the advisors, even to like people in Culkin Hall. And that became really important as time went on at Oswego. And so for me, putting all of that together, the experience was great. It's why I gave back so much. Even all the snow and the wind, like that was part of it. It makes it special. And so I had the best time. I love going back to visit, not that like we're the same age as we were, but it still has that same nostalgia for me. And I think the campus itself has an energy, but it has a community. Like you walk through campus and you'd be like, oh, hey, hey, you'd run into people all the time. And that sense of community, and it's still there, made it really special, for me at least. And like I met my husband there, like it's like, it's a great, and you met your wife there, Mooney, right?
Yes.
And
Yep.
like it's just like a special place, and you meet great people. They're all of the same mindset almost there, the people that end up being in your life there. And the professors were great. We saw a bunch of them the other week, right? And like how many people can go back to their school, go to this dinner, their professors show up, and you're like, they're your friend now, or they're your colleague in your industry now. I don't know that would happen at like a big numbers school. So
No, it's not the same. Not the
no.
same when you go to like a really big school. You can have like that one professor that you became close with, because you took their class and you work with them, whatever. But it's not the same as like, multiple professors, multiple people, like you said, there's even people within, other aspects of the school, right? like Betsy Oberst and people like that who, that you become close with, but you wouldn't probably happen if you went to like Syracuse or Northeastern or something like that.
Right. Like I'd go to NAB in Las Vegas and like meet up with Fritz Masser.
Right.
Hey, Fritz, let's get together. Like you're in Vegas, I'm in Vegas. Your class was the hardest, but I still want to meet up with you in Vegas. I mean, that doesn't happen, I think, other places.
Definitely.
Well,
And I was going to say, sorry, Kevin, not to cut you off. I was going to say, I hope with Dr. Nwosu's vision of 40 and 40 that doesn't change either. Because of, and I share your sentiment that, yeah, the community was so cool. Like you would just walk across campus, be like, hey, how are you? Hey, how are you? And you would know a lot of people. And I hope that doesn't change as time goes on.
That's a really good point. I hope so too.
We'll have to ask him about that on Thursday.
Yeah, we have to start a list of questions. I'm gonna just be like, I'm sorry, but hey, Mo and I, we have a list, so we're just gonna use the whole 30 minutes.
Where Jason's bringing his tape recorder with him, and we're gonna fire some questions off.
Told Dana I was gonna bring the Morants with me.
That's right.
I said, why bring the Morants? We'll go into the FAN studio. We'll just record there. He said it was okay.
Okay. When we were all in college and you were at NYO, you became the general manager toward the end of your stay at Oswego. What drove you to become the general manager of NYO, and what was it like, to be running the college's student radio station?
So I started in other like e-board positions, and I was always on air, like as of second semester freshman year. And then I started doing like smaller jobs and e-board jobs. I loved being at the station, and it was, again, like I said before, like a way to grow, like build another skill. You're starting to leave college soon. You're thinking about it. What else what can I put on my resume? But I also saw the person in front of me do a really great job. Neil Napolitano was the GM prior to me. And he was really good at it. And I spent time with him, and I was like, I think I could do this, like this would be a great experience and a fun experience. Like it's work, but it's not like there's responsibility, but it's not this super heavy thing that's going to drag down my, college experience. And we had a great group. I had a great e-board to work with. I was also running for the position against our friend J-Dub, so that made it fun too. So I got to beat him. No, I'm kidding. But
pretty sure it was a landslide.
Yes. But just to gain that experience and be a little bit more involved, it turned out to be a bigger experience than I expected in a positive way. So for example, you think, oh, I'm running the station and you got to make sure that your team and you all are cohesive and have the same goals. But then like, oh, you got to put a budget together. You have to research equipment. You have to present a budget to the student association, and they might say no, and you got to figure out what you can cut out, right? You got to work with an advisor. You got to find an engineer. You got to replace headphones every 2 weeks because people keep stealing them. Like, where's that money coming from, right? Or breaking them. And all of a sudden, this fun thing about like being at the station became a very important educational experience that wasn't in a classroom, right? And so all of a sudden I'm making budgets. That's come in handy now, right? I'm managing people at the station. It's something I've had to do in my career. And so all of those things combined ended up being way more influential and important than I had any idea when I was doing them that they would be. So, and I got to hang out with all my friends like all the time. And I got credit, which was great too. Because you spend a ton of time down there. So you did, I don't know if you still do, but you get credit for it. And it was just so much fun. And you got to work with the TOP people and the Oswegonian people. And you would work together on a lot of things. Like when a concert would come, that was everybody working together. And you got to help put that together. And just a ton of fun and exposure to things I would not have been exposed to that I ended up needing down the road. So tons of fun.
So when you were the GM, what was one of, if not any of the toughest decisions you had to make when you were there, like as the GM?
I'm sure you've all heard the story, but I had to fire my friends who were on air. That was kind of hard. We still laugh about it. It's even come up during wedding speeches, by the way, like at their weddings. Like we're all still very good friends. We joke about it. It wasn't that easy to do. It was hard. I think the hardest thing was probably budgets. That was hard. And you're on a thin budget and you have to price out equipment and put together a plan really for a year that you're not going to be there. So I'm GM my senior year, putting a budget together in, January, February, because the fiscal year is July to July there. And most business, a lot of businesses, July to July. I'm not even going to be here. Is this what they need? Is this going to cost the same come July and into the next following year? Like that was hard. Because I'm making a decision for people and I'm not even going to be here. And so that was the hardest. Presenting it, no problem, but figuring it out and working with the engineer and deciding what is a good investment for the station, how much is going to cost. And at the time, by the way, we're getting giant catalogs at the station that we got to flip through from B&H, right? Or whatever.
Yeah, I remember those.
Wonderful.
And so firing friends, the budget and POs. POs were a nightmare to go through a PO process to buy things. Those were the hardest.
All right, Agent Scully. A couple last questions here, and I think you probably know them since you listen to the podcast on a regular basis. Question one, what does your chicken patty sandwich look like when you were in the dorm? What was it like?
I mean, I want to say that at the time they were round patties, right?
Yes.
And we would go to the dining hall, like they would just be out there in the tray. I don't think you got it as like a sandwich, but I'm gonna go a little bit off the cuff here. I like the chicken patty sandwich. I was more of a grilled cheese girl in the dorms. I loved a good grilled cheese, and there were grilled cheese all the time.
You're not the first to say that.
Yeah.
You're not the first to say that.
Yes, I did enjoy the chicken patty. Don't get me wrong. And I'm kind of basic with it, like, not a ton of stuff on it, right? But the grilled cheese, the tater tots, kind of my jam.
Yeah. It's pretty good. That's pretty good. And just as important, Yes, we go sub shop, of course. You must have had a go-to sub.
Cheeseburger sub.
Yes.
I know.
Undefeated.
Light on the onions, though. Light on the onions.
Fair. Yeah.
Sometimes be a little much. After that, I did enjoy just like the turkey sub, like turkey, lettuce, tomato, mayo sub. And I don't think there was the Roker or the Steve Levy or anything like that. So those were my like two go-tos. Can I tell a funny cheeseburger sub story?
Of course.
Yes.
So after one of my meetings, I waited until the sub shop opened in the next day up in Oswego to leave. Right. So like I was up at like 8 a.m. or whatever, but I waited till 11 so I could get a sub to have half on the way home on my ride and then like bring it home and maybe for dinner, someone else in my house would want it. And I didn't state the light on the onions part. So driving 4 hours, I take out half the sub and a bunch of onions fall out. You know the crevice where your phone always falls?
Yeah, dangerous game. Dangerous
Not
game.
gonna find those for years.
My car smelled like an onion for probably a good week. I couldn't find this like one piece of onion was still in there. But I had to wait until it just dehydrated and went away. I couldn't find it. Don't make that mistake, people. Don't do it.
It's hard to have. You can't.
Trying to eat a sub.
Eating a sub in a car is probably the second most dangerous game. I think the first most dangerous game is having a chicken nugget and trying to dip it into a sauce.
Mhm.
That's impossible unless you put the sauce in between the seat and the center console so that it's steady. I think that's the only way.
That's
A little
amazing.
life hack right there.
Yeah, it was listen, it was delicious. It was worth it.
Of course.
Only a week of onion stuff.
That's
But
rough.
It was something. They got some onions at the sub shop. So
They have a very heavy hand when it comes to the veggies.
Yes.
You know, to the toppings. You know, they just like grab large amounts and just throw them on unless you tell them not to.
Can I make a suggestion? Maybe we add a Rudy's question. Oh,
Yeah.
I like it. I like it. You could be the first. What was
You
your
have right. Let's go.
Open so often, and you got to be like real deal. Like I'm there in those months when it's
Right.
open, and like, what's your that could be a good secondary question.
Yeah, because they close it, you know, right around now, right?
Yeah. They've been closed for a while, I think now.
Yeah,
A couple months
I have a
anyway, but-
Rudy's magnet on my fridge.
There you go.
Is it the rainbow fish?
Mhm.
Yeah, there you go.
Yep.
What was your order at Rudy's?
I love the fried mushrooms.
Really?
Hmm. I love the fried mushrooms.
Yeah.
Did you go to ranch or a blue cheese dip?
All right, so this is gonna be a little controversial. I love mustard, and I actually
Mustard.
dip them in like honey mustard or spicy mustard. I don't know why,
That's
but
okay.
that's my thing.
Actually sounds kind of good.
And a Labatt's, fried mushrooms, Labatt's. Good.
That's hard to beat.
What about you guys?
Oh man, I don't know. And at Rudy's,
It's been way too long.
I generally go with the shrimp. When we were up there this past in September, I don't even remember what I had. I tried something new. Oh, I tried the po' boy. I think it was the po' boy, and I wasn't really a fan. I'm not gonna lie. Wasn't as good as I was expecting it to be. But it's all right. You live and learn. But I had a good beer while I was there, so you know.
Nice.
I usually go with the fillet, like the fried fillet, and then
Oh, the fish?
yeah.
Yep.
And
They yell
then
from the line, one fry, one fish.
that's right. What were they like the clam strips? Like the fried clams. Those are
Those are
good.
good.
Those are good.
And then you had to walk, a little bit down the road to Bev's and get the ice cream from Bev's, and the circuit's complete,
Yeah.
Yeah. I was always a fish fillet as well.
Yeah.
And just you have to douse it with tartar sauce. I mean, it's just got to be
yeah.
covered in tartar sauce.
Yeah. They
Make it
have
really
a
healthy.
very good, their hot sauce, not like like their hot sauce.
Mhm.
I got it as a gift for my wedding. Someone gave me the
Oh,
Rudy's hot
nice.
sauce. I got an upstate cooler and Rudy's hot sauce was in it.
Awesome.
Their hot sauce is good.
Well, Dana, we greatly appreciate you coming on. Love talking to you. I will see you later this week.
Yes, very excited for the event. Looking forward to it.
Me too. And we will chat again soon.
All right. Thank you guys so much.
And that was Dana Murphy. Like I said, another great Oswego alum. Another great interview, guys.
Another great interview from someone we went to college with. So like we've had a lot of our contemporaries, a lot of our friends that we went to Oswego with have really got on to some huge, big things. And so we're so happy that they're able to spend the time with us, 8:00 at night are typically when we recorded Dana's a little earlier, but on a Monday night, but they're always available, to chat with us, and they're greatly appreciated.
Yeah, I think that's the coolest part about doing this, right? Is having those old connections and the willingness for, our guests to come on and spend time with us. I mean, and we're just a small little podcast that,
Yep.
we're almost a year into this, and it's still awesome that they make the time for us.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't really kind of expect to have this morph into kind of what it's become, right? Like we didn't plan to just start interviewing Oswego people, alums all the time, and just kind of worked out that way so far for us. And it's great to see that what the connections are for all these different people that went to Oswego.
Also, Jay, when you said how I was doing in Arizona, I think I meant to say prune and not plum. But that's a whole other.
Whatever. I mean, technically, right? They both
Technically.
The plum becomes the prune or something like that, right?
Yeah.
Chris, that was hanging with you for the whole interview. That's
it
impressive.
did. Yeah,
And
it did. It really stuck with me. Kind of like when Will Levis said whatever he said instead of matriculate down the field. That stuck with him the entire day after the interview or over the weekend. The Titans quarterback. So it stuck with me the entire time.
Well, fellas, I think that'll wrap it up for us this time. As usual, you can follow us, Throwing Bagels, email us, throwingbagels podcast at gmail.com. You can catch us on Facebook. You can catch us on Instagram, on Threads, on LinkedIn. We're all over the place. You find us, we're there. And we will talk to you next time. See you later, guys.
Bye.
Take care.